Welcome to No Signal. This is our exploration, where we deliberately just, unplug from our hyper-connected GPS-guided world. We really want to rediscover the raw, unfiltered art of travel.
Right, because, look at our daily lives now,
Yeah.
especially for those of us juggling careers, families, all these endless responsibilities. We spend so much time just staring at these color-coded calendar blocks.
Oh, totally. Like, if you look at a modern traveler's smartphone today, their itinerary usually looks way less like a vacation and, well, more like a corporate military operation.
Yeah, we completely engineer out the blank spaces. The modern approach to travel is fundamentally driven by this fear of the unknown.
Right.
You want a guaranteed return on your investment of time and money.
Hmm.
So you pre-book that highly reviewed artisan bakery at like 8 a.m.
And then the museum tickets for 10:00 a.m.
Exactly. You map out the transit route before you even pack your bags. We are so insulated by our devices.
Which is exactly why today we're stepping way outside of that insulation. We're pulling from this incredibly fascinating stack of sources, specifically the translated personal travel diaries of a Japanese backpacker named Marcy.
Yes, the Marcy Diaries. This is such a great deep dive.
And just to set the scene, the era is early 2001. So, you cannot just pull a phone out of your pocket to find your location.
No Google Maps, no Yelp.
Right. There is no TripAdvisor telling you which neighborhood is safe.
Right.
And our protagonist, Marcy, has just completed this grueling, months-long hitchhiking journey. He started all the way up in Sapporo, Hokkaido, and traveled the entire length of Japan down to Kyushu.
Which is a massive journey on its own.
Unbelievable distance. And from there, he takes a ferry across the strait and literally just drops into the sleepless, neon-drenched streets of Seoul, South Korea.
And that's day one of a massive cross-Asia journey.
Day one. And his experience in Seoul really serves as this profound philosophical counterweight to our modern exhaustion. Because Marcy does something here that goes against literally every instinct of the modern Type A traveler.
Let's go.
Completely.
Yeah, and that is actually the central philosophical question we want to set as our compass for this whole discussion. What happens when you completely surrender your itinerary, and I think more importantly, your ego, to the chaotic, unpredictable flow of a foreign city?
It really requires a type of spiritual submission, right? Because backpackers typically pride themselves on their rugged independence.
Oh, absolutely. The whole identity is I chart my own course.
Right. To surrender means accepting that the city's undercurrents are just stronger than your individual will. And we actually see this submission begin almost immediately in his diaries through this seemingly mundane observation.
Yeah, the bus ride.
Right. So Marcy arrives in Seoul, and he reconnects with this old friend from Japan, an expat named Masayushi. And while they're just, riding the local transit buses, Marcy notes this distinct cultural rhythm.
He watches these young Korean men effortlessly just giving up their seats to elders and women.
And it isn't like a rare act of kindness, right?
Mm.
He writes that it's an absolute constant.
Yeah, and coming from Japan, which, is globally recognized for its politeness, Marcy still finds this totally jarring.
Wait, really? Why jarring?
Because in the Japanese cultural context of 2001, giving up a seat might actually involve a slight hesitation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a calculation of wa or social harmony. You might actually worry about offending an older person by implying they look frail,
Oh, wow. I didn't even think of that.
Right. But in Seoul, Marcy observes none of that friction. The young men simply stand up. It is this swift, completely ingrained reflex.
I am trying to place that culturally, and it feels like a fascinating hybrid to me. Like you have this strict, ancient Eastern framework of Confucian respect for your elders, but it operates with the speed and physical assertiveness of almost like Western chivalry. And I imagine there is also a heavy layer of machismo and structural discipline built into the society from South Korea's mandatory military service.
You hit the nail on the head. The military conscription plays a massive role in shaping that social architecture.
I bet.
It reinforces this very rigid vertical hierarchy. In South Korea, age and seniority dictate the entire flow of the room.
Right.
There's this concept of the hyung, which literally translates to an older brother, but it extends to any senior male figure in your social circle.
So it's a huge respect thing.
Huge. When a hyung issues a directive or, makes an offer, it is not a suggestion. It is a social mandate.
And Marcy and Masayoshi experience the physical weight of this mandate almost immediately.
Literally the physical weight.
Yeah. According to the diaries, they have just spent the evening gorging themselves at a local Korean BBQ joint. They are uncomfortably full, like barely able to move.
We've all been there with KBBQ.
Exactly. And then Masayoshi's phone rings. It's a group of his older Korean friends, his Hyungs, and they are calling to say they are taking Masayoshi and his visiting friend out to dinner.
Which, in our typical daily lives, this is where you just employ a polite boundary, right?
Yeah, you just say, hey, I literally just ate, but let's grab drinks later.
Exactly. But you cannot do that here. Marcy's notes are incredibly vivid about the panic that starts setting in.
Because saying no to these senior figures is culturally impossible without causing just deep, deep offense.
Right. So they simply swallow their dread, they agree, and they get into the car. They are fully bracing themselves to force down another massive clatter of grilled meat just to appease the social order.
The tension is just entirely internal. They've basically surrendered their bodily autonomy to the hierarchy.
Yeah, totally.
But then the relief Marcy describes next is just palpable. Because the older guys don't take them to another BBQ joint. They pull up to this chic, ultra-trendy Italian restaurant.
Which is hilarious.
Right. Marcy is just flooded with relief because the dishes arrive and they are these tiny, elegant, high society portions of pasta. He suddenly realizes he can actually survive the meal.
But, beyond the humor of that moment, the Italian restaurant really signifies a critical threshold in his journey.
How so?
Well, by refusing to fight the social hierarchy, Marcy completely sheds his backpacker ego. He just accepts his position at the absolute bottom of this local totem pole.
He becomes a subordinate.
Exactly. And the reward for that ego death is access.
Oh, that makes sense.
He is suddenly pulled into a hidden, high society stratum of Seoul that a typical tourist with a guidebook could never penetrate.
The mechanics of that access do confuse me a little bit, though. I mean, I get that Marcy is riding Masayoshi's coattails here. But Masayoshi is a Japanese expat who moved to Korea just to study the language.
Right.
How on earth did a foreign language student get the keys to this ultra-exclusive network of wealthy Korean hungs?
It is such a wild backstory. The origin of this network is a masterclass in the strange alchemy of being in the right place at exactly the right time in history.
Okay, lay it on me.
We have to rewind Masayoshi's life a few years. Before he moved to Korea, he lived in Yokohama. He uprooted his entire life and moved all the way north to Hokkaido with a singular, punishing goal.
Which was?
He wanted to become a professional mogul skier.
Oh, wow. For anyone unfamiliar, mogul skiing is brutal. It's not just cruising down a groomed mountain.
No.
You are navigating incredibly steep, heavily bumped terrain, launching off-ramps, performing aerial acrobatics. The impact on your knees and spine is just immense.
It destroys your body.
Right.
And Masayoshi spent 3 seasons in the absolute epicenter of Japanese mogul skiing, training alongside world-class athletes.
Wow.
And despite his dedication, he just hit his ceiling. He didn't make the cut.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. He retired from the sport entirely, pivoted completely away from his dream, and moved to Seoul to learn Korean.
But this is the crazy part. The failure in Hokkaido is the exact thing that builds his empire in Seoul.
Precisely. Because of a massive geopolitical shift. Around this time, under South Korean President Kim Dae-jung, the government began lifting these long-standing bans and heavy tariffs on Japanese cultural imports and goods.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. For decades, high-quality Japanese ski equipment was just exorbitant, essentially financially inaccessible to the average person.
Right.
But when those tariffs dropped, a massive ski boom swept across South Korea.
And the infrastructure followed the money, right?
Yeah.
Brand new luxurious ski resorts were carved into the Korean mountains. And, I mean, who populates a newly affordable luxury trend?
The wealthy CEOs, the local celebrities, the elite upper crust of Seoul society.
Exactly. They flocked to the slopes. But because the sport was newly accessible, they were all beginners. They were just hobbyists.
Right.
And into this sea of wealthy novices skis Masayoshi.
Yes. It is the ultimate puzzle piece analogy.
Oh, I love that. Like you hold the puzzle piece, you try to force it into a specific corner of the board, and you feel like the piece is broken because it just won't fit. You think you need to change the shape of the piece itself.
Yeah, you blame yourself.
Right, but then you move it to a completely different section of the board, and it drops in flawlessly. Masayoshi was a quote-unquote failure in the hyper-competitive Japanese scene.
But on these nascent Korean slopes, he is hitting the bumps, launching into the air, executing professional-level aerials.
He looks like a literal deity on the mountain.
He does. Marcy's diaries note that Masayoshi was actually being featured in local Korean magazines just for showing up and skiing.
That is amazing.
His skill was undeniable and visually spectacular. The wealthy older men on the mountain were captivated. They wanted to associate with the star of the slopes, so they adopted him into their inner circle.
And that proximity on the mountain is what forged the Seoul network. And that network's gravity is what pulls Marcy in. Because he said yes to the pasta, he is now strapped in for a midnight thrill ride that tests his physical limits.
Oh, this night gets wild.
So they leave the Italian restaurant, and the older men decide to take them to an upscale bar. Driving through the city center, Marcy is just mesmerized by the sheer scale of the urban planning. He looks out the window at these massive 5-lane avenues slicing through the metropolis.
Which, the scale of those roads is deeply tied to the underlying tension of the region.
Really? How so?
Those 5-lane avenues in the heart of Seoul were engineered to double as military runways.
Wait, what?
Yeah. In the event of an invasion from the north, aircraft could literally land in the middle of the city.
That is terrifying and fascinating. You are cruising in a luxury car to go grab a cocktail, but the asphalt beneath your tires is prepped for a literal war zone.
It gives the city this baseline frequency of intensity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So they arrive at the bar, and Marcy experiences this brilliant moment of cultural whiplash. He checks the premium, expensive import menu to order a drink, and sitting right at the top is Sapporo beer.
Which is so funny because context is everything. To Marcy, a guy who literally just hitched his way out of Hokkaido, Sapporo is the cheap, everyday, local brew you just drink on your couch.
It's hometown water.
Exactly.
But in the context of this wealthy Seoul establishment, surrounded by men wearing expensive watches, it is this high-status luxury import.
Right, so they order it anyway, toasting to the absurdity of the whole thing.
But as the night drags on and the premium beer flows, the mental toll of this cross-cultural exchange really starts to surface.
Yeah.
Because Masayoshi is the sole linguistic bridge. Marcy speaks zero Korean.
And the older man speaks zero Japanese.
Right, so Masayoshi is providing live, real-time translation for a four-way conversation. I am trying to picture the logistics of this in a loud bar after several drinks. It sounds physically impossible to sustain.
It really is.
You have to actively listen to a complex thought, retain it in your short-term memory, parse out the cultural nuance, translate the vocabulary, and speak it aloud, all while the next person is already responding.
It requires immense cognitive load, and as the alcohol hits his system, Masayoshi's processing speed just completely collapses.
He crashes.
Yeah, his brain shorts out, the translation stops, and he just stares at Marcy, completely fried.
But the night does not care about his cognitive load. The group from the Italian restaurant calls again. They demand the parties merge at a Japanese restaurant owned by one of the network.
So it just keeps escalating.
Constantly. Suddenly, Marcy is sitting at a massive table with 7 people he does not know. But because he has surrendered to his role as a visiting traveler, the men treat him like royalty. They're deeply moved by his ambition to cross the Asian continent.
And this is where surrendering to the flow reveals its really sharp edge. Because the narrative of letting go sounds beautifully poetic until you inherit the risks of the people leading you.
Yeah, I really have to hit pause on the romance of the story right here, because the older Hyung who drove them to all these locations becomes dangerously heavily intoxicated.
Right, we aren't talking about a slight buzz here.
No, the man is blacking out.
Yeah.
And yet, he firmly intends to put everyone in his car and drive them home. Now, in 2001, South Korea's enforcement around drunk driving was notably lax compared to global standards today. But this isn't just a cultural quirk.
Not at all.
We are talking about putting multiple lives in imminent danger. How is this a celebrated moment of travel?
Well, it shouldn't be celebrated as a safe choice, obviously, but it highlights the raw reality of total immersion.
Okay, explain that.
When you abandon your carefully constructed itinerary, you abandon your safety net. You are no longer insulated behind the glass of a tour bus. You are subject to the unwritten, often deeply flawed rules of the local underground.
And Masayoshi is thrust into a terrifying diplomatic crisis here. He has to save their lives without publicly humiliating the older brother figure.
Which is a massive deal with the Hyung dynamic.
Right, so he carefully navigates the social minefield, gently insists on taking the keys, and physically drives these incapacitated older men home through those sprawling military-grade avenues of Seoul. How does that element of danger, that visceral unpredictability, actually change the experience of travel for someone like Marcy?
It strips away the illusion of being a spectator. I mean, modern tourism often feels like walking through a living museum, right? You observe, but You are never truly at risk, and therefore you are never truly involved.
You're just passing through.
Exactly. Surviving a night like that alongside locals changes your status. You bleed into the fabric of the city. You aren't just visiting anymore, you share their secrets and their vulnerabilities.
It's an initiation.
Basically.
Yeah. Well, they survive the drive.
Yeah.
The older men are safely dropped off. You would assume that after a harrowing, cognitively exhausting night of survival, the flow would deposit them back at their hostel for a day of recovery.
You'd think so.
Instead, surviving the night earns them deeper trust, and the current pulls them into an even more surreal layer of society.
The gritty reality of the underground drunk driving incident is immediately replaced by this pristine VIP illusion.
It is wild. The very next afternoon, Marcy and Masayoshi are recovering in a local 24-hour PC, bang, a massive Korean internet cafe.
A staple of the culture.
Right. They strike up a conversation with a guy they casually recognize from the neighborhood. It's just friendly, mundane banter. And out of nowhere, the guy mentions he is heading to a TV station the next day for a filming session and asks if they want to tag along.
And operating entirely on their philosophy of yes, they agree?
They just say yes. They agreed to follow a stranger without knowing his identity.
Right, because that casual acquaintance from the internet cafe, he was actually a core member of the massive co-ed pop group Cool.
Which, the cultural weight of that is just staggering. If you aren't familiar with the landscape of early 2000s K-pop, Cool wasn't some indie band. They were chart-dominating titans.
Huge.
The following year, they would literally win the Golden Disc Award, the highest musical honor in South Korea. Their tracks are still karaoke anthems today.
And Marcy, sitting in the internet cafe, possesses zero context for this fame. He has no idea.
None. So the next morning, February 12th, Marcy and Masayoshi wait on a designated street corner. A massive, heavily tinted black van glides up to the curb. The heavy door slides open and they are beckoned into the dark, plush interior. The van pulls away and approaches the towering security gates of the national TV broadcasting station.
And the date is super crucial here.
February 12th.
Right, being 2 days before Valentine's Day, the fervor outside the station is at an absolute fever pitch.
Oh, Marcy's diaries describe looking out from the darkness of the van through a slightly cracked window. The vehicle is suddenly swarmed by a mob of screaming fans.
It's terrifying, honestly.
It's described with almost horror thriller imagery. Dozens of disembodied hands reach frantically through the narrow opening, just shoving desperate gifts and boxes of chocolates into the van. It feels like a zombie apocalypse, except instead of wanting flesh, they want proximity to fame.
And the pop star's reaction is the most telling part of all of this.
Oh yeah, tell him what he did.
He is utterly desensitized to the worship. He calmly accepts handfuls of chocolates, turns around to the back seat, dumps the massive pile onto Marcy and Masayoshi, and simply tells them to eat up.
Just, here, have some chocolate.
Yeah.
It's insane. And then they are granted the ultimate backstage pass. Once inside the studio, Marcy observes the rigid hierarchy playing out on a massive scale. He watches famous, wealthy 20-something actors bowing deeply and reverently to the 33-year-old pop star.
The Hyung dynamic again.
Exactly. They watch the filming of a massive variety show, Sports Day. And the endurance required for this lifestyle is terrifying.
It's a marathon.
The filming wraps at 1:00 a.m. The pop star then takes them to an exclusive hidden bar until 4:00 a.m.
Oh my God.
And when the bar shuts down, they transition to a private room in a PC cafe, playing video games until the sun comes up at 6 a.m.
And Masayoshi confirms to Marcy that this wasn't like a special celebration. This grueling marathon of excess was their standard routine, executed 2 to 3 times every single week.
The sheer stamina required to maintain that level of high society existence is phenomenal.
It is.
But I keep coming back to why the pop star wanted them there in the first place.
Yeah, it's a great question.
He is surrounded by adoring fans and deferential actors. Why invite 2 Japanese backpackers from the local internet cafe into the inner sanctum?
It touches on this brilliant sociological concept regarding the stranger.
The stranger.
Yeah. The pop star's entire existence is defined by his fame. Every single interaction he has is transactional. People want his influence, his money, or his time. Marcy and Masayoshi offered something incredibly rare. Genuine ignorance.
They were completely empty of expectations.
Exactly, because Marcy didn't know who the band Cool was. He wasn't performing for them. He wasn't trying to extract anything. He was just a ghost floating through their world.
Wow.
For a deeply famous person, being around someone who possesses zero ego regarding your status is an immense relief. Marcy was allowed into the absolute zenith of Korean pop culture, specifically because he didn't care about it.
He achieved the highest level of access through the purest form of surrender.
Beautifully said.
Which brings us full circle to the question we posed at the start of this journey. What happens when you let go of your desperate need for control? Marcy's time in Seoul proves that the most profound, transformative, and frankly bizarre experiences of your life will never be found in a color-coded itinerary.
No, they won't. The itinerary guarantees safety, sure, but it completely eliminates serendipity. By shedding his identity as the independent traveler and accepting the invitations of strangers, Marcy lived a lifetime of experiences in just a few days.
We often view our schedules as tools that maximize our time.
Right.
Ensuring we don't miss out on anything important.
Right.
But Marcy's diaries suggest the exact opposite. By scripting every single hour of our days, we leave absolutely no space for the universe to surprise us. We block out the noise, but we also block out the magic.
And crazily enough, this was only the very first stop on his journey. The sleepless nights, the near-death car rides, the zombie mobs of pop fans, this was just the gateway.
The massive, unpredictable expanse of the Asian continent still awaits him. He still has borders to cross and countless strangers to meet.
There is an immense amount of ground left to cover in the diaries.
But before we close the book on Seoul, I want to leave you with a thought experiment that builds on Marcy's egoless travel. We talk a lot about unplugging from our smartphones to find serendipity. But today, our digital constraints are much deeper than just GPS maps.
Oh, for sure.
We are living in an era governed by algorithmic filter bubbles. Our apps analyze our tastes, they predict our preferences, and they seamlessly connect us only to the places, people, and experiences that perfectly match our existing identities. We are constantly catered to.
It's all highly curated.
Exactly. So if the magic of travel relies on being a true stranger, someone completely empty of expectations, wandering into rooms where you seemingly do not belong, is that kind of ego death even possible anymore? Or have our algorithms fundamentally engineered the stranger out of existence?
That is a fascinating question to chew on.
Until next time, keep wandering.